From strange illnesses to a mysterious buzzing radio station, here are 6 unexplained events on military bases. Number 6. A weird drone attack. When it comes to the military, it goes without saying that they want the best technology at their disposal to use against any and all threats, right? Well, in the recent decade or so, one of the biggest tools used by the military has been drones. Drones don't require a pilot to be in them to fly, and they can be flown from across the world if they want. And because of their relatively small size, and they're getting smaller, they make perfect reconnaissance craft as well as making for great strike vehicles when the time calls for it. But everyone's biggest fear with drones is them getting into the wrong hands, or going haywire and causing harm in the wrong way. The worst would be if you're on the wrong end of a drone attack, like what happened to a Russian military base in Syria. In January of this year, out of nowhere, 13 drones, ones without identification, suddenly appeared on one of their bases. Apparently, this wasn't the first time it had happened. This is where things get even more interesting. The drones are what you might call homemade. The drones that were set on the Russian base were hardly the most advanced things in the world, which rules out many enemy nations of Russia, as well as allies. After all, if you were going to do a drone attack, wouldn't you want to do it with more, competent technology? But that's the question, because if it wasn't a leading nation that sent the drones, who did? Russia denies that it was rebels because the drones were too sophisticated for such groups, and that might be true to an extent. But one should never doubt the drive of a person trying to make a statement. And sending homemade drones to attack a Russian military base? Yeah, that's a statement. Number 5. Illness at 30,000 feet. There are many roles within the military, but arguably one of the most dangerous is being a pilot. After all, you have to try and maintain a very powerful piece of machinery, all the while battling the forces of gravity on your body, trying to get through a mission, and sometimes fighting other pilots. It's a lot to deal with, and sure enough, there are special things that pilots have to do just to be ready to fly. Early tests on flight in the air proved that the higher you go, the more likely you'll get issues like hypoxia, which is a lack of oxygen to the brain. This can impair thought processes and judgments. There has been tons of research on this, and we pretty much thought we had it all under control. Well, apparently not. At Luke Air Force Base in Arizona, a rash of mysterious illnesses with pilots at the base has everyone puzzled. This mysterious illness happens when the pilots go up to 30,000 feet, which is standard height for the craft that they're flying, like the F-35. What makes the illness even more boggling is that it acts like hypoxia, but some of the symptoms don't match up with that illness. What's more, hypoxia can be countered by reintroducing oxygen to the system, which all pilots have with them in the cockpit. Yet when oxygen was given, it didn't clear up all the symptoms. Not sure what was going on, the military instituted new safety protocols and retrained the pilots to detect the symptoms of hypoxia. However, once they were sent back into the air, they got sick again. What's more, this illness has popped up in other branches of the military that aren't in Arizona, including pilots in the Navy in Texas and other Air Force pilots in Nevada. As if all of that isn't mysterious enough, this illness has shown up before, but it was never in such large numbers. Cases of this originally happened about once every other year, with only 10 cases being reported in a 10-year time frame. As far as we know, we still don't have answers. And now for some ghosts. But first, if you are new here, welcome, and be sure to subscribe before you leave. Number 4. Screaming woman. There are many places in the world that would seem logical to have ghosts for one reason or another, like a graveyard or an attic, but one that might surprise you is a military base. I never would have thought to put this at the top of my list. However, some people believe that it would make sense because people have sometimes died on military bases. And there's the belief that ghosts haunt places or objects that they're attached to in life. So for a soldier who has died in battle, they might want to go back to the safety of the base. While you might think this is all hypothetical, there are military bases all over the world that report ghost sightings, making them rank high in the list of haunted places. One such example is Warren Air Force Base, which you'll find in Wyoming. A now classic ghost tale that happened on that base was that one night, all the airmen in the base were spooked awake because of a scream. Not just any scream, the scream of a woman. There are different kinds of screams, and witnesses to this event said that the screams were full of despair and desperation. Not the kind of thing you want to hear when you're trying to sleep at night, and probably even less on a base. But wait, it gets worse and weirder. First and foremost, the screams were quick, and they went on for a long time. One set apparently went over 4 hours in length. Yeah, those guys definitely didn't get any sleep. What's more, once personnel were called in to see what the heck was going on, they couldn't find the source. And when they seemed to hone in on the area, the scream would go away and then start again at another part of the base, driving everyone nuts. After that haunting event, many of the soldiers did some research to find out who might have been the one screaming. Sure enough, there had been a murder of a young woman at the base in the 1920s. True, they can't prove that it's her, but it does seem plausible, doesn't it? And this is just one case of a haunting on a military base. There are bases in Germany that apparently have ghosts that walk the halls or move around stuff in the barracks, and loads of other bases have the same kinds of stories. The truth is out there on the bases. Number 3, aliens like missiles. So what's better than having ghosts on a military base? How about aliens screwing with a military base? And no, I'm not talking about Area 51, though I could if I wanted to. But honestly, this story is even better than that one in some ways, because we know it to be a true story. It's just we don't know the how or the why of the situation. The year was 1967. The place was Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana. This base was very special during that year because that base had nuclear missiles on it. 10 of them to be exact, and one night, everything went haywire. For on this particular night, a mysterious red glowing object appeared above the military base. While this alone would have been something to write home about, when this object appeared in the air, the nukes went inactive. Yes, it might have been more terrifying if they had been fired without permission, but think about it. What could have the power to turn off 10 nuclear missiles all at once, all the while not affecting the rest of the military base? The rest of the facility was fine. It was just the missiles that went inactive multiple times. And when they did, there was always that light above the base. Can you explain that for me? Because of this, the Air Force servicemen actually had to go to the nukes and restart them, which I personally would not volunteer to do, I'm just saying. The best part about this was that this wasn't an isolated viewing in terms of the craft and lights that were above the base. 120 men on that base claimed to have seen it, and in 2010, several of them testified in Washington that the event was not only real, but that this was the work of UFOs. Naturally, the greater military presence and the government denied such things, but at the time, when the servicemen reported this to their superiors, they were told to keep quiet, or to say that it didn't happen. Makes you want to know even more now, doesn't it? Number 2, the Russian buzzer. Radio frequencies are a key part of communication, but some radio stations are much more unique than others. Around 1982, a mysterious station came alive in the form of UVB-76. If you could find it, you could listen to a very interesting set of noises. This eventually became known as the buzzer. At first, the station didn't play much. It did a 2-second blip, then it would repeat it infinitely. Fun. But it didn't stay like that forever. In the 90s, the station went to a weird buzzing sound that would play infinitely, living up to the name the people had given it. But it still didn't stop there, for in 2003, for a brief period at least, the station got even more high-pitched. What was going on here? Well, that's the thing. If you listened to the radio frequency long enough, you would hear the buzzing stop, and from it spoke a voice giving out letters and numbers. It was in Russian, and they would spell out certain messages. After a long time of this going on, someone decided to find out the source of the transmission, and eventually they succeeded. It was traced back to an abandoned military base in Povarovo, Russia, which explains why the person spoke like he did. But when people actually went into the base, there was no one there. However, there was a logbook that had written messages that were confirmed to have been said over the radio. So who created UVB-76? What were they trying to say through the messages? As far as I know, no one knows. Yet. Number 1, phantom snakes. Kids can be a handful. One might be trouble enough, but get a group of them together? Oh yeah, you are asking for it. So now imagine having to try and manage 700 of them on a military base. No thanks, right? Well, for one base, they had a weird case of the supernatural that scared the kids so much that they didn't want to return. So what were the kids doing on the military base in the first place? Well, they were students and they had enrolled in a special character building exercise that would last for 4 months. 4 months! Anywho, a military base in South Africa named 3SAI was hosting them, and weird things started to happen once the kids entered. The kids started to note that they were seeing weird things, but no one believed them. Then one of the students stated that they were a witch and wanted to poison everyone's food. Okay, but then the big thing happened. Someone saw a phantom snake, and when this happened, all the kids burst out of the base like no one's business. They actually all ran to the police station because they felt that they would be safe there. To the dismay of the students, no one believed them when it came time to tell their story, and officially the incident was labeled as mass hysteria. I can understand that to an extent, as kids can easily influence one another without much issue, but of all the things they could have seen to scare them silly, why a snake? Guess you'd have to ask them. Thanks for watching! What did you think of these unexplained events? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to subscribe and I'll see you next time. Bye!